Hey everyone, welcome to this special session in collaboration with Dental Student Society and Notefull. I'm Dr. Aster Vas, and today we have the amazing Joseph, founder of Notefull, a platform that has helped thousands of students to ace their TOEFL exam. Many international dentists struggle with TOEFL as part of their DDS application journey, and we know how challenging it can get to get the required score. That's why we are excited to bring you this session where Joseph will share expert strategies, common pitfalls, and insider tips to help you succeed. Plus, as a part of this collaboration, we have a special DSS 10 discount code for you to get 10% off on all your Noteful courses except the small group tutoring course. So stay tuned till the end. Joseph, welcome, and let's get started with you telling us a bit about Notefull and your journey to help students master the TOEFL exam.
Thank you. Thank you. What a nice introduction. So, I think probably the most important thing that I would share for someone working to improve their TOEFL score, especially for dentistry, is that I actually started teaching the TOEFL probably in 2007, 2008.
Right.
So, I've seen every version change, and I started as a teacher. So, in a classroom with 30 students, so 30 people like you all working to improve. And I noticed that the books that I was teaching wasn't really effective. So what I started to do was experiment with my own material so that in class working with students, I would be able to see them improve. And so I kind of always took an experimental approach where I found that the experiment is the exercise. And the result is, has the student improved or changed or not? And so when I started that in 2007, it started to create results. And then that's been the philosophy behind Notefull. That's what's launched Notefull over the years. That real sense of creating change. You read, listen, speak, write differently, and you get a different score as a result. Well, of course, keeping everything up to date. So I take the TOEFL probably every year or so just to make sure. So I've probably taken the TOEFL as much or more than any student. There have been a few who've done more, but I hope that kind of clarifies what Notefull is, what we're behind, and that kind of it's all about you, your dreams, and getting you to your results. So I like to call that Notefull in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean that is really nice. Just to hear about your version of how Noteful came about, and to get started with, like, many students do feel overwhelmed by TOEFL, right? So like, and you said on how you started this by starting with a small group of students in a
Mhm.
class. And can you briefly like tell us or break down how the exam structure is and what does TOEFL really test?
Yeah. So the TOEFL is going to be a 2 hour exam you have to go through. There's a reading portion where you read academic articles and answer questions, listening portion where you listen to lectures and conversations and you answer questions,
Yeah.
speaking where you speak your answers to four different questions, and writing where you write your essays and that are evaluated. And there's no break in between. So 2 hours of very intense work. And I can break it down a little bit more detail. So, for example, in the reading, you have two academic articles that you have to read in a total. Each one, you have 18 minutes, right? So the idea is that you read and then you answer 10 questions on each reading. And then at the same time, you have the listening, where you have five different listenings. You answer six or five questions on each. The speaking, you have four questions that you answer, 45 seconds to a minute. And the writing, you write essays. One is going to take you 20 minutes to write, and one is going to take you about, 10 minutes. Excuse me. And so for me, the most important thing for someone to understand is that it's testing your instantaneous learning and your instantaneous explaining under academic conditions. So it's kind of like undergraduate university. You're getting a reading, and the expectation is for you to be able to learn it in English in the moment and then answer the questions. Listen to something and then in the moment answer the questions. Same thing with speaking and writing. So I think that tends to not be something a lot of students realize, that it's something that you can't prepare for what you're going to get. It's always going to test, here's something new. In the moment, you have to have enough vocab, enough strategy, enough comfort that you can read, listen, speak, and write instantaneously. So it's really an exam that is evaluating a level of preparation more than something that in the exam you can change. Like if you make a mistake on the exam, not much you can do except move forward. So it's really the preparation before that's going to give you your score. I'm not sure if that makes sense. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, it is clear. And like in your experience, what do you think is, or like what section do you think the students struggle the most and why?
I think the section is reading. I find the reading challenging a lot of students. And I think the main reason is because number one, students need to make sure that they build their vocab so that when you're studying the reading, you should think to yourself, a higher score will come after I learn 250 to 500 more words. Strategy is super important, but I find that that vocab element usually is missing.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, that is a really good insight to how to prepare for reading, especially. And coming to addressing some of the common mistakes and how to overcome them, what, according to you, are like the top three mistakes people do when preparing for TOEFL?
I think the number one mistake is under preparing.
Okay.
I think that's the big thing because I notice a lot of students, they'll practice and
Yeah.
they'll notice, oh, when I practiced this reading, listening, speaking, or writing, it was tough and difficult.
Yeah.
And they still take the exam in a way where they think, well, maybe it'll work out. So it's really important to know how you're experiencing the practice on when you're studying by yourself is
Yeah.
kind of letting you know how you're going to perform on the exam. So feel like we all have deadlines, so everything's urgent, but it's so important to remember the exam really rewards preparation. I think the second thing after under preparing, I think would be prioritizing time management on the exam.
Okay.
For example, for the reading, every question should get approximately an even amount of focus, right? Maybe some questions you can be a little faster, but sometimes students will just let go of the timer, focus on one question for too long, build stress, and then now they're rushing through the other sections. So it's really hard to guess in order to stay on time for the reading and
Yeah.
listening. And for the speaking and writing, it's really important to feel comfortable letting go of details. Because if students are trying to say everything they heard or everything they want to say, it'll be an imbalanced answer. It'll be rushed. It'll be cut off. And then that tends to lower the score. And then the same thing for the writing. And then the third one, I think this one's a little bit tougher, but I would say not realizing that 60% of your score is TOEFL training, strategies, tips, templates, exercises that focus on the TOEFL. And when you really want to improve, 40% is academic English. So I noticed that a lot of times students focus on the TOEFL training, but they're not at the same time building their vocab, building their grammar, maybe exploring the topics they find difficult to try to comprehend them and build their understanding of those things that are challenging them. And sometimes even when they speak, a student will follow steps to speak and write, but then they won't look at their writing or listen to their speaking and say, do I think this is clear? Do
Yeah.
I think this deserves a high score? Just that little focus can really change how you study so that when you take the exam, you do better.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely important to focus on the 40% as well, as much as you're working on the 60% of the templates and everything that is out there. So what do you have to say when, like, or how can students avoid getting stuck at the same score despite multiple attempts? Because that's something I've heard happen, and like, is that people always get stuck in the same score sometimes, no matter how many times they give the exam.
Yeah. I would say first, be kind to yourself, right? Because when that's happening, it's very painful. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel good for me or anybody. You're working hard and then you're seeing the same result. So first, that's the first thing, so that you stay motivated. You can pass, you can break through it. You have to remind yourself of that because then you can start feeling hopeless. No matter what I study, I'm going to get the same score. The exam is about luck.
Yeah.
So I would say at that point, the most important thing, the only way, I wish I could give you tips, tricks, but in the end, as professionals, the TOEFL's like anything else. So I would say set a schedule to study whatever section, 50 hours. Like you
Yeah.
just have to think, okay, I'm going to study through this. So I'm going to set a schedule for 50 hours. I'm going to find where I'm challenged because when a student is stuck in the speaking, most are aware. I hesitate a lot when I speak. I can't come up with the words right away. I'm always saying and like you have an awareness of where that challenge is. So then you can concentrate and you can say, you know what, I'm going to invest these 50 hours to change that and I'm going to do it in this way. And of
Yeah.
course, so you always have the courses for it, but I think take responsibility and say, I can break through this. I know if I dedicate 50 hours and focus on my challenge, I will. And then be patient enough to wait until you finish the 50 hours and then evaluate. Did I get better or do I need more? Usually you'll feel better. And then when you take the exam, you'll notice you broke through. You're going to get 2 or 4 more points.
Yeah, I mean, you told us about how it is important to relax before you keep giving exams, or like at least make sure. So, what would be your advice for someone struggling with anxiety and time management?
I would say for anxiety, we have a Notefull, the thing that we always say, our froggy breathing.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing for anxiety is to know it's normal. Everybody feels it. I take the exam. I feel it too. Nobody escapes it. So that sometimes gives us a little relief. I'm not alone in this. Everybody's dealing with it. So if we treat it as a part of the exam, that can change a lot. And the second thing is, everyone listening and watching, you're all academic professionals, you're intelligent, you're experts, you know the research. If you allow yourself to have an exercise like, okay, anxiety means I'm feeling tension in my body, excuse me, and I'm thinking negatively. So in that moment, actually say, I'm going to move in a different direction. So I'm going to stop and take a deep breath with my eyes closed, kind of just reset myself and tell myself I can do it. This is a tough exam. I don't have to be perfect to get my score. I can do it. And sometimes we have to do that every few minutes. Sometimes we feel stressed because I don't want to stop taking the exam to do that. But if we don't have some active thing we do, that anxiety will build. And that'll kind of maybe overwhelm us and make us break our strategy, our technique, and not get our top score. And for time management, there's really 2 things. For the reading and listening, guessing is part of strategy. Intelligent guessing. Guess your way into time management. It's the only way. And for the speaking and writing, the TOEFL rewards clarity more than details. So feel comfortable that if you sacrifice details so that you can speak clearly, finish on time, it's going to lead you to a higher score. Same thing for the writing. You need good grammar. You need to make sure you read your previous sentence and you're really expressing yourself in a way that someone else can really understand what you're saying. And that person would say, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's for me, stress and timing, how to deal with them when they come up.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing those important points. I mean, it definitely makes it a huge difference while applying for giving your TOEFL exam.
Mhm.
And can you tell us how does Notefull's approach differ from a self-study or other preparation courses?
I think the number one thing that we do differently, and probably there's a little sense in this kind of interview that we're having, which is great, and I'm grateful to be here helping everybody, is in-depth, detailed training for people who want top scores. So we're not focused on giving you practice and answers. But for example, we do a TOEFL reading together in our self-study material. There's a reading for you to practice. And then we dig into it, spending hours, how to read the sentences, how to execute the steps, where students tend to go wrong. So I would say deep training to change every little thing for the reading, listening, speaking, and writing to make sure you're actually changing how you read, listen, speak, and write in a way that's going to get you results on the TOEFL.
Okay. And what do you have to say about like an ideal study plan for someone who's giving it for a 1 month versus like 3 months to prepare?
I think for one, it's really interesting because some students will study 200 hours in 1 month, and
Yeah.
some students will study 40 hours in 1 month. So I would say that rather than think about the time, think about the study time.
Yeah.
And so if in 1 month, probably the average student may study about 40 hours, I think the mindset is I'm going to master the TOEFL if you have 1 month. That means you're taking practice tests, you're focusing on strategy, you're trying to build your vocab and your grammar, but there's not too much time for that. So it's really, I have my current level and I want to maximize it for the TOEFL because you can strategy your way into a higher score, right? So maybe my reading skill is a 20, but if I master strategy, maybe I can get it to a 22, 23. So 1 month, master the TOEFL. Every minute of it, visualize it, all the strategies and techniques, super TOEFL. When you have 3 months, I think you need to divide it in half and you can get really big results where you're thinking to yourself, maybe 50 to 75% of my study time, I would say closer to the 50,
Mhm.
is all TOEFL. Strategies, tips, techniques, tricks, practicing the questions. And then the other half is let me forget the TOEFL, take my TOEFL material, right? My lectures, my readings, and let me just study every word. Let me study all the grammar. Let me research these ideas. Let me read about them. So you're building that academic English too. Like even with speaking, let me just forget the timer and record myself. Do
Yeah.
I like the way I sound? Am I smooth? Am I clear? Does it make sense? Let me practice until I am. For the writing, the same thing. Maybe give a friend AI, of course. We're
Yeah.
using it for everything, but is it clear? Does it make sense? So it's like 60% of your study time, I say 50 to 75, TOEFL, 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 and then building your academic English, your confidence, your clarity with reading, listening, speaking, and writing. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And those are really important points as well. And I know, like you just mentioned as well, you've been in this profession mentoring students from 2007 and even working on your website and new ideas, how to like keep updated with the new version of
Mhm,
TOEFL.
mhm, mhm.
I do want to ask you, like, could you share a quick tip or an exercise that students can start, like from today, to improve their TOEFL score?
Yes. So there are so many things, but I think the best thing would be you take a lecture, any TOEFL listening lecture, and you listen to it, you take notes on it, you do the questions on it, and then afterwards, you read the lecture, the transcript, just
Okay.
as you would a TOEFL reading, and just read through it word by word, investigate every word you don't know, all the grammatical phrases you're not sure of, research the topics you don't know. Then, after that, with the notes on the lecture, explain it as if it were a TOEFL speaking question. Take the time you need, doesn't have to be a minute, record yourself. It shouldn't take more than a minute and a half.
Yeah.
So, after you record, you listen, you try to make it better, then you write a summary of it. So you actually type it out. And of course, now you can have AI evaluate it. So the biggest tip to instantly improve, of course, it's not specific to any TOEFL section, kind of on the listening, is you take one piece of material, TOEFL listening, the lecture, then you use it to train the reading, then you use it to train the speaking and then the writing. And what that's going to do is it's going to shift your mindset to say, oh, I kind of see how it all relates. Because sometimes students are studying vocab for the reading
Yeah.
and they're not using it for the speaking and writing. So it's ineffective study time.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are concepts in the lecture that are difficult. The student got a question correct, but is not taking the time to understand it. So that vocab in another TOEFL, they're not going to get that question correct anymore. And that's why our score can fluctuate. So
Yeah.
doing that for a lecture that you like through all four sections will really power every part of your skill to get a higher score. Of course, as you're studying everything else.
Yeah. And could you tell us a bit about the AI guide that you've been working on so that the viewers know what they're looking forward to in Noteful?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I'm deeply excited. And what I find is really powerful is that we're creating AI guides now. So I'm working and I have created some where we have AI deep trained on the templates and strategies that we teach. And we're concentrating on every section, but mainly on the writing, because one of the things that is missing in general for all prep is that ability to, okay, I've learned a template and I have this question, but can I have an experience for an hour or 2 hours where all I'm doing is getting trained on that? I'm getting a question, I'm producing the template, getting feedback and examples. Okay, another one, another one, another one. So, kind of this very efficient way to study. So, the AI guides that we have now, we've released one for writing question number two. And so, anybody who registers for I'll share, we'll talk later, but the diamond or gold course. So, when you register, you'll see you'll have access to that. So that way you can get a question, produce your essay, get
Yeah.
immediate feedback, bit of an evaluation and score on it, an example teaching you what you did that needs to improve over and over again. I'm very excited and I expect that by the end of this year we'll have 40 to 50 guides total. That'll be every element of every section of the exams. Very exciting time. Very exciting.
That is exciting, and I cannot look forward to like wait to look forward to the 40 to 50 guides that is gonna come up. And I think
Yeah, step by
if
step because we have to make them work,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
but I
yeah.
think it's a really good way and innovative way to help in learning. It's like a great resource out there. And for those listening, I do want to mention again that Joseph was really kind enough to support Dental Student Society, the dental students especially, to offer a 10% discount by using DSS 10 for those who are struggling in this field. And I think TOEFL is one of the most important requirements while applying to dental schools in the US. And thank you so much, Joseph, for doing that.
Yeah,
Another
absolutely.
thing is, yep, and I think you have a great website which is open for free resources as well as a different kind of courses out there as well. And I think you've also been talking about to your students who have gotten the dream score that they wanted and like having a talk with them with success interviews. So I think it is a great way to even acknowledge their hard work and yours as well. Um, so, Joseph, I do want to ask one more question. Any final words of motivation for students preparing for this exam?
Yes, you can do it. You can do it, especially for dental students because most have the minimum score of 100, depending on the programs they want.
Yeah.
And every student is different. So whether you're new or whether it's been a while, just never give up. Study 12 to 24 hours a week. Trust yourself. You will pass. You will pass. Just never give up and know that if you succeed smoothly, excellent. That's what we want for everybody. And if your journey is a little bit tougher, you're not alone. Reach out to people. You can pass and succeed. We're here to help. And that happens sometimes, but it doesn't mean you won't pass.
Yeah. Well, Joseph, this has been an insightful discussion. Thank you for sharing these valuable strategies as well with us today. And thank you everyone for tuning in. If you found this helpful, share it with your friends who are preparing for TOEFL. And don't forget to follow Notefull and the Dental Student Society for more updates. And I also know that Joseph keeps making live on Instagram and on Facebook. So if you have, make the most use of the resources that you have out there. And don't forget to use the code DSS10 in all your courses, except the small group tutoring ones. Thank you again, Joseph, and see you all next time.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye
All right, bye bye.
bye.